Well, apparently the Coreweave conspiracy theory has been, air quotes, debunked. That is, according to MarketWatch this morning. What's up, guys? I'm nobody special, and when I woke up this morning and started reviewing the news feed to get ready for my morning live stream, I couldn't help but notice the green bar at the top of MarketWatch, and I was so excited. Maybe finally the mainstream press is doing their journalistic duty in covering the story going on at Coreweave, but alas, the message from MarketWatch is nothing to see here. Move along. That and a heavy dose of personal attacks. The article in MarketWatch this morning was based on a research note by AB Bernstein analyst Stacy Raskin. That's not Stacy Raskin. Hey, Tech Crew. I don't have a Tech Crew. Tech Crew. That's not Stacy Raskin from AB Bernstein. That's the analyst from the movie The Big Short. You know, the one who was blind and didn't see what was happening right in front of her face. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why they would put that image up there instead of a picture of Stacy Raskin. But as I was saying, the article in MarketWatch, it was written by Wally Witkowski, shown... hey, Tech Crew. I don't have a Tech Crew. Tech Crew. That's not Wally Witkowski from MarketWatch. That's the reporter from the movie The Big Short. You know, the guy who was more worried about his Wall Street connections and damaging his reputation than telling the truth? Guys, we must be having some kind of technical difficulties. I don't know what has got into my Tech Crew this morning. If this is some kind of weird innuendo or literary device, I don't know. But why don't we just move on to the article, shall we? And the first thing you're going to notice is personal attacks in the headline. Well, isn't that just a hallmark of valid investigative journalism? Before you short NVIDIA after reading investment advice from Twitter randos, read this. Apparently, I'm a Twitter rando. Well, that's just disconcerting. Now, if I were a nitpicking a-hole with no class, I might zero in on the fact that he called it Twitter and not X, that he got the name wrong, because that would be a low-class a-hole kind of move to use a little slip-up like that to try to discredit somebody's work while ignoring the context of what they were actually saying. I mean, who would do something like that, right? But then even in the byline, we've got this feigned indignation from Stacy Raskin. Bernstein analyst can't believe he has to debunk conspiracy theories, and yet here we are. Well, gosh, Stacy, I hope you didn't have to get dirt on your pretty shoes slumming it with us Twitter randos. And don't you just love how they call it a conspiracy theory as if it's not the freaking 2020s? I do believe my English teacher would refer to that as irony. But moving on, reading from the article, NVIDIA Corp's revenue doubled while its cost of goods barely crept up, so there must be something fishy, right? A company is using their NVIDIA graphics processing chips as collateral for billions in loans. That doesn't sound right, does it? No, as a matter of fact, it doesn't sound right. As NVIDIA shares fell 3.1% to close at 470.61 on Wednesday, Bernstein analyst Stacy Raskin must have been hearing from clients all day who were worried after reading the most recent conspiracy theory, there's that thing again, on why NVIDIA's 222% year-to-date stock gain must somehow be fixed. You'll notice they keep calling it a conspiracy theory. The entire point of this article is to discredit my work and Samantha LeDuc's work. This is not reporting. This is not journalism, guys. This is a smear piece. Recently, there have been a couple of NVIDIA short theses circulating widely on social media. Raskin wrote in a note titled, "Please don't get your investment theses from Twitter randos." And I agree with that last statement. Please do not get your investment theses from Twitter randos. Do your own research and come up with your own conclusions. They are, for the most part, puerile, he said, adding that clients keep asking about them and whether or not they could be moving the stock. Hence, we very grudgingly write this note today. Let's skip past the feigned indignation of very grudgingly writing this note. Golly, I'm sure sorry to put you out, Stacy. But let's talk about this first thing here. They are, for the most part, puerile. All right, hang on, folks. I'm just a Twitter rando. I have no idea what puerile even means. Let's look it up here. Puerile means childishly silly and trivial. Well, look at the big vocabulary on Stacy. And second of all...
Johnny, that really hurt!
Yes, but back to the question at hand. Raskin has an outperform rating on NVIDIA stock and a $675 price target. Of the 51 analysts who cover NVIDIA, 47 have buy ratings and 4 have hold ratings with an average target price of $649.22, according to FactSet. Couple of things I want to point out here. 51 analysts, 47 have buy ratings, 4 have hold ratings. Not one sell rating out of all 51 analysts. Groupthink much? Gee guys, I'm sorry to go against the grain here. I'm sorry to say something that is universally disagreed with, but I don't know if you guys knew this about me, but I used to work in nuclear power, and groupthink is proven to be incredibly dangerous in nuclear power. When everybody is saying the same thing as if it's universally agreed upon, you almost have an obligation to play devil's advocate and consider the fact that maybe everybody is wrong, because when everybody thinks they're right and they all do the same thing, very bad things are prone to happen. Not one analyst has a sell rating on NVIDIA, not one. And lastly, I just want to point out that Raskin does have an outperform rating on NVIDIA stock, but Raskin has something else going for him that is not disclosed anywhere in this article. You see, according to AllianceBernstein's most recent 13F rating, Stacy Raskin doesn't just have a buy rating on NVIDIA, Stacy Raskin has a long position in NVIDIA. So a journalist with integrity might feel compelled to include that detail in the article that, hey, this guy is long the stock and maybe he wants to disclose his holdings because there might be the appearance of a conflict of interest. By the way, for those asking, I have no position in NVIDIA, neither short nor long. Moving on from Stacy and Wallace's failure to disclose Stacy's conflict of interest, the first thesis Raskin shot down was that while NVIDIA's revenue more than doubled from a year ago, their cost of goods sold only crept up 7%, hence something must be wrong, and I'll admit that did not seem right to me. This is nonsense, Raskin wrote. Recently, NVIDIA's data center sales topped Wall Street expectations by more than $2 billion, something we all already knew, while the company's revenue forecast for the third quarter was more than $3 billion higher than expected, something we also already knew. And this is where the article takes a kind of ironic, almost hilarious turn, because in this next paragraph here, I think Stacy is suggesting that he is debunking the conspiracy theory about Coreweave, but what he's actually doing is arguing that the loan to Coreweave for $2.3 billion was even more suspicious. The analyst explained that NVIDIA took $1.34 billion in charges that included a $1.22 billion in inventory reserves, and that ran through COGS, or cost of goods sold, in the year-ago quarter when it appeared NVIDIA was melting down. So what he's saying is back in the fourth quarter of last year, NVIDIA took this $1.22 billion hit because they couldn't sell GPUs. Previously, those things were only really used for gaming and crypto mining. Those sales were dropping off a cliff. NVIDIA had all of this inventory, and so they wrote down the value of that inventory by $1.22 billion. Now, Stacy is playing gotcha here by pointing that out as if it could explain the low cost of goods sold. And although I'm not an accountant, I'm actually in agreement with Stacy here that that would explain the lower cost of goods sold because they already took that expense in prior quarters. But what it also does is it points out just how irregular, how highly suspicious that $2.3 billion line of credit is. Because if Stacy had bothered to watch my videos, he would have recognized that I pointed out how those cards, those GPUs, were not going to hold their value. And so it's very irregular that a $2.3 billion line of credit would be issued with those used as collateral. Something that just a few months ago, they wrote down the value of $1.22 billion. So Stacy's being kind of smug here, acting like this proves all these conspiracy theories are wrong, but all it proves is how highly suspicious that $2.3 billion line of credit is, because these guys at Magnetar are accepting as collateral something that just a few months ago NVIDIA marked down to almost worthless. Stick that in your risk model and smoke it. Looking closer, Raskin said that when those charges were excluded, cost of goods sold actually increased by about 70% in the second quarter from a year ago, which was entirely normal given the year-over-year strength in data center sales. Again, I'm not disagreeing with Raskin's accounting. The problem is it doesn't say what he thinks it says. He's just arguing here that that loan to Coreweave was even shadier than even I was admitting. I mean, wow, if they had to write this stuff down by billions of dollars just a few months ago, who in their right mind would accept this stuff as collateral now? The second thesis concerned GPU cloud vendor Coreweave, which recently listed its NVIDIA AI chips as collateral and financing $2.3 billion in debt led by Blackstone and Magnetar Capital. He's saying this as if this isn't the very issue we were talking about in the prior paragraph, but I digress. Since NVIDIA is an investor in Coreweave, Raskin said internet innuendo has effectively implied NVIDIA used this to stuff the channel, pointing to it as driving their data center beat in the quarter, as well as accusing NVIDIA of other nefarious intents given their investment in Coreweave. Beyond somewhat hilariously confusing Blackstone with BlackRock during the process, this is also nonsense, Raskin wrote. Remember that thing I said at the beginning about how it's a low-class a-hole move to zero in on the nuance of somebody slipping up with the names? Who does that? By the way, I just want to point out that BlackRock was involved in that $2.3 billion line of credit. Now, while Blackstone was the leader in that $2.3 billion line of credit, and indeed Samantha did mistake Blackstone with BlackRock, something literally everybody has done at least once in their life, but I just want to point out this sentence in the second paragraph of that article. Other lenders in the facility include Coatue, DigitalBridge, as well as BlackRock. So yes, BlackRock was involved in the $2.3 billion line of credit. That's something any journalist with any integrity would have pointed out in the article if they were actually journalisming. Raskin goes on, NVIDIA did not need help from Coreweave or anyone to juice the quarter. Yes, they did. Their products are all on allocation, and the debt facility was announced August 3rd after the quarter was completed, with the release suggesting deployment has likely not happened yet. And again, I gotta take you back to this August 3rd article. The date on the line of credit is irrelevant. In accordance with accrual accounting, the earnings are booked on the date the order is placed, not the date of the article covering the line of credit or the closure of the line of credit. As long as Coreweave placed the order during the quarter, whether they paid or not at that point, the earnings would be booked in that corner. Stacy Raskin knows this, and he is intentionally leaving out that detail, and Wally Witkowski has failed to fact-check him on this matter. Raskin noted that NVIDIA not only invests in Coreweave, but other AI startups like Hugging Face, Active Surgical, AI 21 Labs, Skydio Inc., and Superliminal Medicines. What are topics that are totally irrelevant to the question at hand for 1,000, Alex? And as companies like Coreweave build businesses based on NVIDIA GPUs, it is in NVIDIA's interest to see them succeed, given their presence offers a counter to the threat of bigger cloud service providers developing their own internal AI offerings, Raskin said. Again, this is totally irrelevant to the question of are the things happening at Coreweave above board or not. Raskin is just throwing this crap in there to confuse you and to keep you from looking any closer. And guys, that's it. That's the end of the article. More than 1 hour of video content about this story, and that was the entirety of the debunking that they gave us. Now, let me just mention a couple of details that Wallace Witkowski and Stacy Raskin did not include. They made plenty of time for personal attacks. They made plenty of time to feign indignation at even having to address these claims, but they left out the most important details of the story, and here are just a few of them. The first thing they left out, and what I think is the single most important detail that proves that what's happening at Coreweave is not above board, they did not touch the network of at least 20 shell companies that Coreweave executives set up in the Cayman Islands during their time trading carbon credits at NatSource Energy. I am yet to hear anybody even attempt to propose the most far-fetched legal explanation for why anybody would set up 20 shell companies in the Cayman Islands, an area notorious for tax evasion and money laundering, something that Interpol warned about in their carbon credit trading crime report that I cited in my Part 3 video. Of all the critics, of all the personal attacks, not one person has offered anything resembling an explanation for this, because there is no explanation for this. This is indefensible. Nobody will touch this one because they can't. Anybody who bothers to look, this is publicly available information, and I will put a link down in the description below, paging any journalist who is worth their salt. Go ahead and look. 20 shell companies, possibly 60, set up in the Cayman Islands for trading carbon credits. Stacy Raskin took plenty of time to poke fun at Twitter randos and people getting BlackRock and Blackstone mixed up, but Stacy Raskin didn't touch this one with a 10-foot pole, and Wallace Witkowski left out this giant mushroom cloud of smoke suggesting there may be fire in his alleged debunking article this morning. Another very important detail that neither Stacy nor Wallace mentioned was the Magnetar trade. The fact that Magnetar, the people who have been bankrolling Coreweave for the purpose of sending that money straight through into NVIDIA, that they have a history of assembling deliberately sabotaged investments for the purpose of selling them to unsuspecting retail traders while simultaneously betting against them. I will put this article down in the description for anybody who bothers to look. Magnetar is the sleaziest hedge fund in the history of Wall Street. They got rich making the global financial crisis worse, and they got away with it, and now they're pumping NVIDIA stock through Coreweave. That's something that people need to know, and that is something that Stacy Raskin and Wallace Witkowski withheld from you in their article this morning. Something else Stacey and Wallace didn't mention is this release from just May 6th of last year, where the SEC charged NVIDIA with inadequate disclosures about the impact of crypto mining, that NVIDIA had to pay a $5.5 million fine to the SEC because they made materially misleading statements in their quarterly reports, withholding information that was vital to investors about just how much of their business was coming from crypto mining. And in 2018, NVIDIA stock dropped by something like 50%. Jensen Huang and the people at NVIDIA knew that they were vulnerable to a downswing in crypto, and they withheld that information from investors, and the SEC fined them $5.5 million. No mention of that in Stacey's analyst note or in Wallace's article. They also left out this little minor detail about Christine Hoberg, the former CFO of NVIDIA in 2000, who was charged with fraud by the SEC and had to pay $671,000 in fines because she withheld information about cost of goods sold in the quarterly reports of NVIDIA. You see, Christine Hoberg, who was CFO while Jensen Huang was still the CEO of NVIDIA, made materially false statements that inflated NVIDIA's earnings by 15.3% in that quarterly report. She convinced a vendor to undercharge NVIDIA for the cost of goods sold so that would artificially inflate their earnings, and then she created a separate second agreement with that same vendor where they agreed to overcharge in the following quarter so that that vendor could recover the money. Then Christine Hoberg withheld that information from independent auditors who definitely would not have signed off on their books had they known that was going on. That's called fraud, and she had to pay $671,000 to the SEC because of it. Jensen Huang was CEO when this happened. So one of two things happened. Either Jensen Huang knew about this and did nothing to stop it, in which case everything I'm saying about NVIDIA needs to be viewed through that light, or Jensen Huang had no idea that his CFO was artificially inflating NVIDIA's earnings by 15%, in which case, what does that say about Jensen Huang as a CEO? This was not included in Stacey Raskin's research note, nor was it included in Wallace Witkowski's article, but you know where it is included? In the description down below, so you can check it out for yourself and make up your own mind. So there are two takeaways from Stacey Raskin's research and Wallace Witkowski's article. The first is, ooh, I can't believe I have to go down into Twitter and bother to debunk these conspiracy theories as if it's not the 2020s and most conspiracy theories have already been proven true in this terrible decade. But the other message in this article is this: nothing to see here. Move along. Wallace Witkowski's job in this article was to convince you not to bother looking. His job was to convince you that my work and Samantha's work and Kaship's work was not even worth your time to look. Now, I would remind you that any journalist worth his salt, his job is to report the truth, to reveal the truth, to follow the story wherever it may lead. But what Wallace Witkowski and Stacey Raskin are doing, besides not disclosing that Stacey Raskin is long NVIDIA, what they're doing is they are trying to tell you not to even pay attention to this story. They're trying to destroy this story before you even see it. In other words, this is anti-journalism. This is trying to hide the truth. This is trying to hide this story. The whole point of this article was personal attacks, was to get you to not pay attention so that if you see it in your feed, you don't even bother to look. They don't want you to look. The whole point of my series on NVIDIA was somebody look. I can't believe nobody is looking. And when I made these videos, it was my sincere hope that somebody in the press would look. And unfortunately, the first people in the press to say anything about this are telling you not to look. This is anti-journalism. It's disgusting. And to Wallace Witkowski, whatever you paid for your journalism degree, get your money back. Now, before filming this video, I went through the mental exercise of doing a Google search for journalist and integrity. And this is literally the first image that came up. Take a good look at this, especially to all you journalists out there. I'm talking to you specifically right now. Look at this image and tell me this is not the kid you were in college when you went to journalism school. Tell me this is not the ideals that you had. You had that dream of breaking the big story, of exposing the corruption. And then you got out of school and you got into corporate America. And like most people realize at some point in their life, it's not like they tell you in the stories as a kid. You're shackled by lies, by abuse, by corruption, by threats and cover-ups. And I guarantee you, any journalist who's watching this video knows exactly what this image is saying. And I want to appeal to that kid you were in journalism school. I'm talking to you, the journalist out there, who still has some integrity left. This is going to be expensive if you decide to cover this. This might burn a bridge. It might cost you a connection. But you know what it won't cost you? Is your ability to sleep at night. This won't cost you your integrity. I'm not asking you to believe a Twitter rando. I'm not asking you to get your investment advice off of YouTube. I'm asking you to just look. The links are down in the description. Just bother to look. And I am convinced if you look, you will reach the same exact conclusions that I reached, that the people running Coreweave are majorly suspicious, that the people at Magnetar are majorly suspicious, and right now there is a significant flow of billions of dollars from Magnetar to Coreweave to NVIDIA, and that is resulting in a higher share price. If I am right about this, then millions of people are being robbed right now. And it really looks like retail traders who are piling into NVIDIA stock and people who own NVIDIA stock through their retirement plans, because every pension fund, every 401k, every IRA in the country is in NVIDIA stock. And you, the journalist, have an obligation, you have an ethical and a moral obligation to follow this story and see where it leads. And if you're not doing it, I want you to look in the mirror and explain to that kid you were in college why you're not looking into that story. I have no position in NVIDIA stock, Stacey Raskin does. I am here presenting you with easily verifiable, publicly available information. And I'm just asking somebody in the press to please have some integrity. Be the first. You could blow this whole thing open, or you could toe the party line and play it safe and let somebody else blow this story open, and they'll get all the credit for it, and you will have passed on the opportunity of a lifeline. I will make 100% of my work on this topic available to any journalist who asks. Nobody has asked. Not one journalist has approached me for details on this story. Wallace Witkowski sure as heck did not reach out to me for comment before he ran his debunking piece. Any journalist who's willing to look, I will give you everything I have on a silver platter. Nobody has taken me up on the offer. Till next time, live small and dream big.